What if you could hold all the wisdom of the world in your hands? That was exactly what Anansi, the trickster, dreamed of. In a time when gods and men roamed the earth together, Anansi stood out, not for his strength, but for his unmatched cunning. A spider with a reputation for cleverness, Anansi always wanted more. No trick, no scheme could ever satisfy his endless hunger for knowledge. He yearned to be the wisest, to know all that had ever been known. And one fateful day, he did the impossible. He gathered every piece of wisdom the world had to offer and sealed it away in a single pot. Just think of it, everything anyone had ever learned, every secret, every answer to every question, all locked away in one small container. Anansi could hardly believe his luck. He held the universe's secrets in his grasp, and with it the power to outwit anyone who dared challenge him. But as pride swelled within him, so did fear. What if someone else found his treasure? What if they took it from him? Anansi's heart raced at the thought. No, this wisdom was his and his alone. No one would ever steal his prize. Determined to keep it safe, Anansi knew there was only one thing left to do. He had to hide it, somewhere no one would ever think to look. Anansi searched the world, his clever mind racing. Every spot he considered for hiding his precious pot of wisdom seemed too easy, too obvious. He couldn't risk anyone finding it, not man, not beast, not even the gods. Finally, an idea struck him like a flash of lightning. The tallest tree in the land. No one could reach it there, not even the boldest of creatures. Satisfied with his brilliant plan, Anansi tied the pot to his belly with strands of silk, each one stronger than the last. The pot, filled to the brim with all the knowledge in the world, pressed heavily against him as he prepared for the climb. He glanced up at the towering tree. The journey would be difficult, but Anansi wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. He began the ascent, his many legs gripping the rough bark. With each step, the pot swung and swayed, a constant reminder of the weight it carried. The higher he climbed, the more precarious it became, the pot jostling with every move. But Anansi refused to stop. He climbed with fierce determination, higher and higher, convinced that once he reached the top, all the world's wisdom would finally be his and his alone. As Anansi climbed higher, the weight of the pot became a burden heavier than he had imagined. Each step made the pot sway precariously, throwing him off balance. His legs trembled, his grip tightened, but the climb only grew more difficult. Down below, a young boy stood, watching the spider god struggle. After a long silence, the boy finally called out, "Why do you carry the pot in front of you like that? Wouldn't it be easier on your back?" Anansi paused mid-climb, the boy's voice cutting through his frustration like a knife. Easier on his back? The thought had never crossed his mind. How could it be that he, who held all the world's wisdom, had missed such an obvious solution? A child with no wisdom at all had seen what Anansi could not. His pride stung. His face tightened, and a wave of anger washed over him. Had he really been so blinded by his greed? His careful plan now seemed riddled with flaws. He gritted his teeth, the pot feeling heavier with each passing second. His brilliant scheme was unraveling, slipping through his fingers, even as he clutched it tighter. Doubt crept in, but Anansi pressed on, determined to protect what he believed was rightfully his. Anansi's fury swelled, hot and overwhelming. How could he, the great trickster, the cunning collector of all the world's wisdom, have overlooked something so simple? A child had seen what he, in all his cleverness, had missed. His pride, once towering, felt crushed under the weight of his oversight. Frustration boiled within him, clouding his thoughts. In that heated moment, his careful plans unraveled. His hands, steady and quick, suddenly faltered. The pot, brimming with the vast knowledge of the world, slipped from his grasp. For a moment, it hung there, swaying on the thread of silk, before gravity seized it. The pot struck the tree trunk with a deafening crack. Anansi's breath caught in his chest as the pot shattered, its pieces splintering and scattering like stars falling from the sky. In that instant, everything changed. What he had guarded so fiercely was gone. Wisdom, once sealed away, safe in his clutches, was now free. He watched in silence as the shards of knowledge caught the breeze, drifting far and wide, carried across the land. The wind seemed to whisper secrets to the earth, spreading wisdom into the hearts and minds of men, women, and even children. The wisdom he had hoarded was no longer his alone. It was everyone's. Anansi, the spider who had woven countless schemes and tricks, stood still, his mind buzzing with the realization. The prize he had sacrificed so much for was gone, slipped through his fingers like sand. All his plans, all his effort had ended in this. A world filled with the very knowledge he had tried to keep for himself. As the shards of the pot scattered like stars into the wind, Anansi collapsed at the base of the tree, his legs trembling beneath him. His grand scheme, the one he had woven so carefully, had unraveled before his eyes. The pot that once held the world's wisdom was no more, its precious contents now adrift on the breeze. He had dreamed of being the keeper of knowledge, the one everyone would seek out, the source of all answers. But now, the very thing he sought to control had slipped through his fingers. Anansi's heart sank as he watched the world transform before him. The birds soared high above, their wings carrying whispers of wisdom. The trees swayed gently, rustling with secrets, and the rivers babbled with ancient truths. All of nature now held a piece of what had been his. It wasn't stolen from him by a stronger force, nor taken by cunning rivals. No, it was his own greed, his blind ambition, that had undone him. He had hoarded too much, and in doing so, had lost everything. He sat there in silence, the weight of his failure heavy in the air. The knowledge he once sought to trap in a single place now flowed freely, beyond his reach. The world would learn, it would grow, and it would thrive. Wisdom, once unleashed, could never be caged again. And as Anansi gazed out at the world, he realized that the one thing he had truly underestimated wasn't just the power of wisdom, it was its uncontainable nature. Anansi sat for what felt like hours, his eyes fixed on the spot where the pot had shattered, leaving nothing but a hollow emptiness in its place. The air was thick with the echo of his mistake, but there was something else there too, something unexpected. In that silence, he felt a shift deep inside him. It wasn't anger or frustration this time, it was humility. The world he had once tried to control, to keep all to himself, was now alive with the sound of people discovering wisdom on their own. Laughter, conversation, curiosity, it all filled the air around him. Anansi blinked, realizing something he hadn't before. Wisdom wasn't a prize to be hoarded, a treasure kept hidden from everyone else. No, wisdom was alive, fluid, meant to be shared and passed along. His failure had done something remarkable. He hadn't just lost the knowledge, he had set it free. And in doing so, he had given the world a gift far greater than anything he could have imagined. A smile crept across his face, tinged with bittersweetness. He had failed by his own standards, yes. But what he had unleashed, the way wisdom was now shaping lives, was more powerful than anything he could have planned. He had lost, but perhaps in losing, he had gained something far more meaningful. With wisdom scattered like seeds on the wind, the world began to transform. People no longer had to search for a single source of knowledge. It was everywhere, woven into the trees, whispered in the rivers, and written across the stars. Anansi, the once cunning spider god, now watched from the shadows, no longer plotting, but quietly observing the world he had unknowingly shaped. His failure had birthed something far greater than his selfish ambitions. As he traveled from village to village, he heard his own story told around fires. A tale of a trickster who tried to hoard all the world's wisdom for himself, but lost it in a single moment of carelessness. The people laughed at his misfortune, but they also marveled at how wisdom had become a gift for everyone to share. Anansi's defeat had unlocked something bigger than he could have ever imagined. He wasn't angry anymore. No, there was something almost comforting in seeing how the world thrived without him pulling the strings. In the end, Anansi realized he hadn't been written out of the story. He had become part of it. A reminder, etched in the fabric of the world, that no one can truly possess knowledge. It flows through us all. Anansi's scheme may have crumbled, but his story was far from over. Word of the spider trickster's attempt to hoard all the world's wisdom spread quickly, whispered around village fires, and told to wide-eyed children as the stars glittered overhead. The trick that failed was a tale that would be remembered for generations. Anansi, who once believed he could hold all knowledge in his hands, had unwittingly unleashed it to everyone. He thought he could control it all, but the moment that pot shattered, so did his grip on the world's secrets. What started as a clever plan to make himself the wisest of all had turned into something far greater than he could ever have predicted. Wisdom flowed freely now, passed from one person to the next, embedded in the stories people told and the lessons they learned. Anansi, who had sought to keep it all for himself, had instead become woven into the fabric of the world's knowledge. In his failure, Anansi became part of something larger, no longer just a trickster, but a figure at the heart of a story shared by many. He may have lost the pot, but what emerged from its broken pieces was far more powerful. And so, Anansi's name lived on, his cunning forever linked to the wisdom he could not keep, yet helped give to all.